So before we get to the tricky part, where we have to work with different UV mappings, if you don't have any clue about the UV mapping stuff, if you can't remember anything, just have a look at this tutorial in my channel, the UV mapping and texturing, for all the basic stuff to this topic. Because now we will just use this kind of techniques. Before we do the UV mapping, you should do the smoothing, because when you are in the 3 mode, this is only a preview, and it could happen that your maps or your textures are some kind of stretching and looking a little bit ugly, and so what you always should do is save your scene in this rough mode, and then go to mesh smooth and check the division levels to 2. Then now you shouldn't use the 3 mode anymore. So when I press 3, nothing is really happening, and now the whole geometry is smooth. You should also do this with your ear cups. You see here in my UV editor, I have it open here, that here's a little bit of mess, and I'll show you how to fix it. And I also do a smoothing here, and because these are the parts I will UV map. Then the second thing you do, you see here the UVs are quite for nothing, and so we just add a new material here for the headband. Assign new material. Take our standard surface. I use already the plastic, and the color. Actually, I don't need a color because I have a file prepared, and so go to the checker file, and I get my headband beads. Okay. Now you see it here in the UV texture editor, but I don't see it here. We need an appropriate UV mapping method, and for that we select here, for example, just 4 faces in the middle section, and I press Shift and the arrow, and so I can, or just the arrow, where I can grow or shrink my selection. And so I just select here this kind of area. Actually, I do this grow or shrink my selection area, and I think the best mapping method you could try cylindrical mapping, of course, but I tried it already, and it stretches it up a little bit, and so I think a planar or a camera-based mapping is the best way, and for that I switch into the top view, and here I just pressed F on the keyboard, so I focus my area, and so I have the perfect view from the top. Here the screen stuff, this is the camera, just hide it. And now I do a camera-based mapping, and what happens is you see a UV shell here, and I see the first time beads, but it looks quite ugly. And what I do here in the UV editor, take the UV shell and I scale it, so this direction, and It depends on how much faces you selected, and I think this is a good, maybe it could be a little bit bigger, my beads here. So, and here all the other stuff, because something, whatever, is crossing here my beads word, and so I just take all these shells and put them somewhere where there is just red. Okay, so nowhere is any other. Okay, I'm not sure if this is too big, so just make it a little bit smaller, the beads text. Okay, then the next step is here. Okay, I did some kind of tryout on this side, but I will show you here on that one. Yours also might look like this. And what I do, if I just here, when I'm just in a UV shell selection mode, okay, it automatically selects here, for example, this outer part. But if it don't work for you, what you can do, for example, to do a good mapping is that you take one face, press Shift, and double click the face next to it. So the whole face ring is selected, and then do the grow selection method again. So you're just selecting it should go most of it inside. When it's too much, okay, you see here it's coming out, so I shrink my selection again so it is somewhere here inside. Okay, so now I selected everything, and what I do is I now use the cylindrical mapping. Okay, cylindrical. You see it does something like this because my mapping is lying in the completely wrong direction. So I'm searching for the red T. Then I'm activating the light blue circle, and now I rotate this one time in this direction and one time in this direction, and you see my wave is getting smaller. And so, and the goal is to do it quite straight. Just open up my options because it helps me to work a little bit more accurate. I'm not sure if I take 360 because the ear cups are lying a little bit. Yeah, I think minus 360 won't work. No. So it should nearly be straight. So just play around a little bit. So this doesn't do any much. So this is quite okay, I think. Okay. And I try to see what happens. So I just assign a new material. Where is my standard surface? Then I give the standard surface a nice red. And now the leather look. Of course, you can load also here in the color a leather structure, but the leather is actually just made with a bump map. Also, this inside fabric it's just made with a bump. And just for a short explanation what a bump mapping is, here, just that you remember, I'm not sure if you heard something about it. A bump mapping is like you see it here at the orange. With a black or white image, you can give an object some kind of a rough structure. Okay, everything that is black here, it pushes the geometry inside. It doesn't push it actually, it's just the look of it. And here you see in the images for any kind of structure which should look like, you can use a bump mapping. Okay, I think this explains quite good what's happening. And we do this with the ladder. So I just go here. You have to go in the tab called Geometry, and there is our bump mapping. And for that, go to the checker, and we use the file. Then at this step, because I know that the bump depth of 1 is way too high, just type in 0, 0, 0.1. Okay, and then go to this little arrow here next to bump value, because there is the file actually hidden. So press on the folder symbol, and what you need is this seamless black ladder texture normal.jpg. This file isn't black and white structure. Actually, it's a normal map which works similar like the bump mapping. And we just use it here. And now we switch on our Arnold render view so that we can see the effect. Okay, press the play button. And I zoom it in a little bit. I hope my Maya isn't crashing. Looks a little bit glossy. So. You see it here a little bit, but first of all we have to adjust the material because the leather isn't that glossy. So I just go inside the material attributes. And what you can do, you can actually, because from the leather we also have a specular map, and we can load it here inside the specular weight. You don't have this textures automatically, but I give it to you and you can try what's happening. And the specular map, so we add a file and add here the specular JPEG. And what this does is it isn't everywhere perfectly glossy. Okay, you don't see a huge difference because the material itself is way too much glossy. So we just reduce it and give it a more roughness. So now the leather is even more looking like leather. I'm just going here a little bit more inside so that I can see the leather effect. I think we will increase the bump mapping a little bit more because I see it too less. So go here inside my bump mapping, and here you have the file 6, and here just add more bump value. Yeah, now you see it even better. And I'm not sure if I should put a minus in front of it. And good that I went inside this, because here we don't use this violet normal map as a bump map. Actually, we have to use the space normals. So now it's getting, no, I think I have to put minus in front of it. And just play around with this value. It depends on how big your geometry is. And I'm not sure what's better. So it's too less. No, we keep it the tangent space normal. You see here, it looks a little bit strange in this area, because we haven't done the UV mapping there. We will do this just in a second. I'm just not sure if I'm more happy with the minus or the positive value here. So I keep it in that way, and I just do the mapping of this part. Just switch off my rendering so that my trash. So what I do again is I take one face in the middle, double click one next to it, and I grow my selection that it's going, I hope, right far enough. No, that was too much, because I see here selection. So be careful that your selection ends here at your hues. And what I also do is I do a camera-based mapping. So now I just try to arrange my camera so that I have a quite nice look on my ear cups, and do a UV camera-based mapping. Now you see here I mapped my ring, and just switch on my rendering again and see that my leather is looking now like leather. Just have a look from different sides. I think when your leather structure, I think mine is a little bit too big. So what you can do, and of course the inner part should be the same size than the outer part. So in your UV editor, for example, you can put take your shells and you can scale it up, for example. Then you get a more smaller structure. You see it? Maybe this was a little bit too much. Just find a nice middle way, and also I do it here. My leather texture is seamless. Okay, so that helps me to so that I can repeat that and there is no seam actually seen somewhere. Okay. So just check if this looks nice on every side, and as next step I will do the UV mapping and the material for this inner fabric part. For the inner part I actually do the same, but now I add my material first and just switch to my face mode and do this ring selection again, and now I grow my selection as long as so until it's going here. So for example, okay, I think I did it not perfect, but maybe a little bit more. So, and I assign a new material. Standard surface as usual. I do the red stuff again. And I do bump mapping again. And now I select type. I'm just trying, I'm not sure which bump depth is working here. Perfect, just type 0.01, then go into the bump value, and now I add this one, this black and white stuff, and you see there is a preview. Just switch on my render for a short moment. Actually, because there is no mapping, it won't work quite well. Actually, it's too glossy, so the first thing I do, I just go, this was the surface number 6 was this material, and I increase my roughness and switch down my specular weight so that it isn't that glossy. So I don't see so much in my rendering. And I switch it off because I do the mapping first. Now I do the selection mode again. And now I select the ring to this inner border. Go to my camera and oh, actually I can use this UV shell here because this looks quite okay. I don't need a mapping, but you can also do a camera-based mapping. So this UV shell I can take actually, and I may scale it up. But now I think I do the mapping anyway because I see it here. This does look, oops, too far. It looks a little bit strange. No, I do the mapping because it is stretching here, some kind of strange thing. So okay, we can't use the shell, we have to do the mapping. So put myself on my camera directly in front of it and go to UV, and no, not the spherical mapping, oops, a camera based one. Okay, now my rendering does much more work. And for this outer part, also double click One Ring and I grow my selection not too far. So now this seems okay. Now I need a cylindrical mapping, and be careful that you rotate your cylinder as we did, so that this, oh, now I found it perfectly rotation and it looks straight. I hope you aren't too much messed up with because there are different layers over each other. I just scale it so that it fits here inside my view. Actually, I can put away, this is the mapping from the outer part, and there is the leather is seamless, so I can put this away. And now let's see what my rendering does. If my fabric looks okay and the bump mapping, you see the structure. It's not too bad. Maybe it's too small here. So take this inner shell and scale it a little bit so that it's not too small. And also the outer shell. So let's scale it a little bit. Now let's have a look. What you can do now on your own is to play around with the specular weight, with the roughness, of course a little bit with the color, also with the index of refraction, and check which setting might fit the best, okay? So that it has a nice look. So now I just did the rough work for you, the rough steps. I think they are okay, and of course it depends on your geometry and your mapping, but your result should look like similar like mine does. In the next step we will do a little bit more focus on the rendering and to get rid of a background, for example. But now I think you have plenty of work to do fixing your earphones, and of course you don't have to do it on the other side. Just copy your perfectly UV laid out ear cup to the other side so that you don't have to work on the other. Okay? So until the next part. Oh, and I forgot to mention that you have to do here, you need to add the beats. So where I have it here, yeah. This bee should come here. So I think now with the techniques you can do this on your own. It shouldn't be a problem. And what you also can do on your own is you don't need me here for that. But when you have a closer look at the images, you have to give this a material, and there are such white lines here. So just have a closer look. So where do I have my Yep. So always check on the images how the materials look like. I think mine is still a little bit too glossy and a little bit too red. And here you see you need a golden materials with some white stripes. Here it is, the cables are just simply red. But try to get this nice smooth look with your materials. Also, you can add an R and L on the other side on these buttons. That are things that you now can do on your own. You know the techniques for that. So this R and L you have to create on your own in Photoshop, or you can use the Maya text tool as you like, and try to do your best to just adjust the materials and the look and the glossiness and the matte and the roughness, so that your rendering should look like this one here. I know it won't be perfect, but just do your best.